Good day, everybody. The circling was almost just not going to end. 1515. This is Yin Yang in California with morsels of a thought number 1515 at about, what time is it? It's about 5:23 or 5:28 right now. I can't tell which. 5:24. Okay. Yeah, I'm late because I woke up at 5:05 and our show is usually at 5:10. Yeah, sorry everybody. Okay. So, anyway, here's our show. Today we are going to go into what the Stoic Epictetus said. We have his book, The Complete Works, translated by Robin Waterfield. Let me go get. Sorry. Okay. Sorry. You saw that. Yeah. Well, we'll have to fix that, won't we? All right. Here we go. Again. All right. Just put this in. Right. Sorry. All right. So. Oh my gosh. Ay, ay, ay. Ay, 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 ay. Ay, ay, ay. Oh boy. Oh boy. So anyway, um, hmm, I really didn't wake up very quickly. I had to run, and you should see me at 5:08 here. The thoughts in my mind are going, oh my God, the earrings are too big. Oh my God, this is ridiculous. Oh my God. Oh. So this was happening at 5:12 and 5:13. Oh my God. Ay, ay, ay. Epictetus. So we were on page 107 in his Discourses, Book 1, number 19. So what? Since most of you are blind, there has to be someone to stand for you, doesn't there? Someone to praise God on everyone's behalf? After all, what else can a lame old man like me do except sing God's praises? If I were a nightingale, I'd do what nightingales do. If I were a swan, I'd sing like a swan. But as it is, I'm a rational being, so I must glorify God in hymns of praise. That's my work, and I carry it out. That's what I've been assigned to do, and I shan't give up as long as I'm allowed to continue. And I invite you to join me in my singing. 1.17 on the indispensability of logic. Number 1. Since it's reason that analyzes and processes everything else, and since it shouldn't go unanalyzed itself, what is it that analyzes it? The answer obviously is that it is either reason itself or something else. Now, this something else, quote unquote, must either be reason or something superior to reason, but there is nothing superior to reason. So, if it's reason, the question again arises, what will analyze it? If it's a case of reason analyzing itself, the reason we started with can do that. Otherwise, if once more we call on something else to do the analyzing, we'll find ourselves in an unresolvable, interminable regress. That's his quote. That's what somebody's saying. 4. True, but therapy and all that it entails are much more pressing needs. You want my response to that? Here it is. Suppose you were to tell me, I'm not sure that your argument is valid or invalid, or suppose I use a term in an equivocal way and you ask me to disambiguate it. I won't comply. I'll just tell you, There are more pressing matters. That, I imagine, is why logic is given priority. It's the equivalent of considering the measure before weighing grain. If we don't first determine what a modius is, and if we don't first determine how a pair of scales works, how will we be able to weigh or measure anything? The same goes here. If we don't have full and precise knowledge of the criterion by which we assess everything else, and which enables us to gain full knowledge of everything else, how will we be able to gain full and precise knowledge of anything? It'll be impossible, won't it? Number 9. All right, but a modius is just a piece of wood. Nothing comes of it. It's good for measuring grain. And nothing comes of logic either. Well, we'll come to that later. But even were that to be granted, it's enough that logic should enable us to draw distinctions and investigate everything else, to measure and weigh them, as it were, according to whom only Chrysippus, Zeno, and Cleanthes, but it doesn't Antisthenes say so too? And who was it who wrote education begins with the examination of terms? Doesn't Socrates say as much? And who's Xenophon writing about when he says that he made his starting point the examination of terms, that he inquired into the meaning of everything? So, and then the other person says, so, this is a great and admirable achievement to be able to understand or interpret Chrysippus? No one's saying that. What is admirable then? Understanding the will of nature. So, where does that leave us? Is that something you can do by yourself? If so, what more do you need? I mean, if it's true that all wrongdoing is involuntary, and you have full knowledge of the truth, you're bound to be acting correctly already. Good heavens, of course I don't understand the will of nature. Who can explain it then? It's said that Chrysippus can. I go and try to find out what this interpreter of nature says. At first, I don't understand his meaning, so I look for someone else to explain it to me. Here, I say, what do you make of this? What do you think it means? Treat it as though it were treat it as though it were written in Latin. So, is there anything here for the interpreter to take pride in? It wouldn't be right for even Chrysippus himself to feel proud if all he does is interpret the will of nature, but doesn't follow it himself. The same goes even more emphatically for his interpreter. Look, we don't need even Chrysippus for himself. What we want is his help in understanding nature. After all, we don't need a diviner for himself either, but because we expect him to help us understand the future and the signs sent by the gods, nor do we need the entrails as such, but because they are the channels of communication, nor is it the crow we think important or the raven, but the god who uses these birds as his messengers. So I approach this interpreter, this diviner, and I say, examine the entrails for me, please, because in those days they used entrails to tell the future, entrails of animals. Anyway, what message do they hold for me? He takes them, spreads them out, and interprets them as follows. My friend, you have will, which is in itself unimpeded and unconstrained. So it is written here in the entrails. I shall prove it to you, first in the domain of assent. Can anyone stop you assenting to a truth? No, no one can. Can anyone compel you to accept a falsehood? No, no one can. Do you see that in this domain you have a faculty of will that is unimpeded, unconstrained, and unobstructed? And what about the domains of desire and inclination? Isn't it just the same? Or who or what can overcome one of your inclinations except another of your inclinations? Who or what can overcome a desire or who or what can overcome a desire or an aversion? Sorry, I keep on saying that. Or an aversion except another desire or aversion. But if someone threatens me with death, that's a kind of constraint. No, it's not the threat of death that's constraining you, but the fact that you judge it better to act in ways that enable you to avoid death. Once again, then we find that it's your judgment that's constraining you, which is to say that your will constrained your will. After all, if God had made the part of himself, the fragment of himself that he gave to us, such that it could be impeded or constrained by him or anyone else, he would no longer be God, nor would he care for us as he should. This is what I find in the entrails, continues the diviner. This is God's message to you. If you so wish, you are free. If you so wish, you'll blame no one, you'll find fault with no one, and everything will be in accord, not just with your own will, but with God's. This is the prophecy that makes my visit to this philosophical diviner of ours worthwhile, not because I admire him for his interpretation, but because I recognize the importance of the content of his interpretation. Now, this part was what we were reading last time. And one time, well, that's so strange. I put that here. Oh, that one should not be angry with people for their mistakes. And then we read that one should not get angry with people for their mistakes last week as well. And then we read in January on the 20th, day of inauguration, or actually Monday, we read the proper attitude to have toward tyrants. I don't know if you'd like me to read it again. If anybody's on, please tell me. It was a bit of interesting stuff. And then we can go back to, after we skip all that, we find out that we're on 1.20 on reason and its ability to examine itself. What timing! Every art and every faculty has the ability to examine certain specific objects. When it's of the same kind as its objects, it necessarily becomes capable of examining itself as well. When it's of a different kind from its objects, it's unable to examine itself. Take shoemaking, for example. It occupies itself with leather, but it's not at all leather-like itself. So it's unable to examine itself. Or take grammar. Its concern is grammatically correct language, but that's not to say that it is itself grammatically correct language, is it? No. So it can't examine itself. Now, why has nature given us reason? For the correct use of impressions. Well, what is reason in itself? A systematic arrangement of impressions of various kinds. So it's natural for it to be capable of examining itself as well. Now, consider wisdom. It comes with the ability to look at what objects, things that are good, bad, and indifferent. And in itself, what is it? A good thing. And lack of wisdom? A bad thing. Evidently, then, it necessarily has the ability to examine both itself and its opposite. It follows that a philosopher's most important and crucial work is to assess impressions and distinguish between them, and only ever to accept an impression if it has been assessed. In the case of coined money, which is supposed to be of interest to us, you can see that we've actually invented an art covering all the ways in which an assayer tests coins: sight, touch, smell, and, last but not least, hearing. He throws the denarius down, listens to the sound it makes, and so far from being satisfied by hearing it ring just once, he listens again and again until he becomes a regular musician. So, in areas where we think it makes a lot of difference whether or not we're misled, we're very diligent about trying to spot things that are likely to mislead us. But in the case of our poor command center, we yawn and doze and carelessly accept every impression because it doesn't occur to us that any harm will come of it. So, if you wish to know how casually you treat things that are good and bad, and how seriously you treat things that are indifferent, compare your attitude toward going blind with your attitude toward being in intellectual error. Then you'll see how badly you misjudge where goodness and badness lie. I need my pen, pencil. Oh, it's not here. Gee whiz. There it is. Okay. I absolutely need this part to be highlighted. Okay. But that needs a lot of aptitude, hard work, and study. So what? Do you think it takes only a little effort to acquire expertise in the most important art there is? It's true that it takes hardly any time to state the core philosophical principles. If you're curious, read Zeno and see. You'll see. I mean, how much time does it take to say the goal of life is to follow the gods, or the essence of goodness is the right use of impressions? But ask, what is a god, and what is an impression, or what is the nature of a particular individual, and what is the nature of the universe? And these questions take time. If Epicurus happened by and told us that goodness must be something that involves the body, that again is a lengthy matter, for which you need to understand what the principal faculty in us is, that is, what the substantial and essential part of us is. It doesn't seem likely that goodness for a snail has to do with its shell. So, is this a plausible thing to say about a human being? Consider just your own case, Epicurus. What faculty do you have that's more authoritative than the body? What is it in you that deliberates, that thinks about everything, that considers the body itself and concludes that it's our principal component? Why do you light your lamp and work so hard for our sakes, writing so many books? Isn't it to make sure that we're not ignorant of the truth? Who are we? What are we to you? And that's how the discussion becomes lengthy. Now the subject is to those who want to be admired. When a man occupies his proper station in life, he doesn't yearn for anything more. What would you like to happen, man? Speaking for myself, I'm satisfied if my desires and aversions are in accord with nature, if I manage my inclinations and disinclinations as my nature requires, and if my intentions, objectives, and acts of assent are in compliance with nature. So, why are you walking around letting us see that you've swallowed a skewer? I want to be universally admired. I want people to follow me around, crying out, what a great philosopher! Who are these people, the ones whose admiration you want? Aren't they the same people that you usually call mad? So you want to be admired by mad people? Wow. Now, on preconceptions. Preconceptions are common to all people, and there's no conflict between one preconception and another. Is there anyone who doesn't believe that anything that's good is advantageous and choice-worthy, and that we should make it our goal and aim in every situation? Is there anyone who doesn't believe that anything just is honorable and fitting? Anything just is honorable and fitting. So when does conflict occur? In the application of preconceptions to particular instances. For instance, when someone says, he behaved honorably, he's a brave man, and someone else says, you're wrong, in fact, he's out of his mind. That's how conflict occurs between people. Hence, the conflict that exists between Jews, Syrians, Egyptians, and Romans is not over the principle that holiness should always be one's top priority and should be one's goal in all circumstances, but whether the particular act of, say, eating pig meat is holy or unholy. They had these conflicts way back then. Wow. So we're going to continue on with this one next week. It is going to be on preconceptions. Um, then they come up with something to hold up against Epicurus. So right now, what we have gone through is the beginning of the section. Last week, we went through the prospect held out by philosophy on providence, and we went to that and finished it today on providence. And then we went to today on the indispensability of logic. We read that. That's most of what we did today, what we did mostly today. So then, that one should not get angry with people for their mistakes was last week. Boy, do I have an error to tell you. I went out and tossed somebody's plants because I thought they belonged to somebody that wasn't living here anymore. And boy, oh boy, it turned out that they belonged to somebody else in the building who hadn't said anything. They had been sitting in a place where they were supposed to be thrown out, and they had been sitting there for 13 months, and the new management hadn't had us take it out and all that. So I wound up doing that, and then boy was she mad. But she said her ability to stay tranquil is integral to her ability to stay out of illness. So she was not going to reveal any rage to me. And I said, I am so sorry. You can just kill me. Kill me now. Kill me here. I really said that. I really said that because there was nothing I could do. I had no way to replace it. It was irreplaceable. It was a plant from another state, which actually is contraband to California, that by the way. But nonetheless, it was still her medicinal plant. She said it was, some of it was to cure parasites and deworms you, and then something else was for cancer. So I felt so bad. So that was a mistake that I have to mention, because on mistakes and how not to hold it against people, I certainly appreciate that now. Okay, I'll talk to you later. I hope I've entertained you. I hope that we've imparted morsels of a thought of wisdom. The right thing to do is wisdom. Knowing the right thing to do is wisdom. And then going out and actually doing it is virtue. So let's bring more virtue into this world. Okay? Old Kinderhook.